Alright, so what I'm here today to show is just a little bit of a trade route hack that I found that I think actually will work out pretty well. So, what I currently do on all of my islands is typically I'll make a bunch of a resource and just kind of divvy it out to the rest of the region. So you can see here's my sewing machine route in the old world where it's just all being made on a single island. So you can see I'm making 43 a minute. The whole region only uses 16, so I have no problem divvying it out. But one problem that I sometimes run into when I'm doing this is if you go actually into the trade route here, you can see that not coping where they're being made is loading up all of the sewing machines here, and then we're divvying it out to all the other islands. So one thing you can see here is, I'm loading up 300, and 300 are immediately being unloaded on Beerlin, the first island in the trade route. However, if Beerlin is not at full capacity, it means all these other islands never actually receive these. And then what I also tend to do, just as an extra thing, is I usually just sell at the end, so like the free pocket watches and stuff that you can get, make sure that I'm always just getting more. But you can see that that could be a problem, but it's not like a severe problem, but initially kind of getting things up and running, it can be a little bit obnoxious. And so and in fact, you can actually see that if you go to this route, you can see that this island actually didn't have any sewing machines. So you can see it is in fact out. So there is a reason why we might want to do something like this, at like the idea that I've come up with. So for one thing, you can see that minimum stock is going to be a very important part of this process. So you can see currently we have a minimum stock of 100 on this island, meaning when we set a trade route to export our sewing machines, we always have a couple of them here, so they don't run out on that island. And what this will depend on is that you set a minimum stock on every island on the trade route. And so currently we set a minimum stock of 150 on Beerlin, the next island being Elisteria. We'll set a minimum stock of, we'll say like 153. And then Banansas will set a minimum stock of, let's say, about 100. And so those are all the islands on this trade route. Now what you do with this route is that you actually set it where they both load and unload sewing machines. And what this is doing is that when you do this, it's going to go to Beerlin, it's going to unload these all, then it's going to reload them to its minimum stock. Then it's going to go to Elisteria and do the same thing. It's going to go to Banansas and do the same thing. So what this is ensuring is that you're going to have enough for your minimum stock threshold. In this case, we set it around 150. But then also, if we're completely full, it'll still dump it all at the end to make sure that we're still making them to get our free pocket watches and gramophones. But what makes this really convenient then is that, we load them up initially. We have a minimum stock, so not coping never runs out. We unload them all on Beerlin, and then we reload them up, but while keeping its minimum stock of 150. Then we bring them to Elisteria, and we unload them and then reload them to its minimum stock. And then we do the same thing to Banansas. So every island will have like 100 to 150 after the route's been completed before we pick them up again. And then anything extra just gets dumped over. And so this will ensure that we have... Yeah, you can sell them anywhere. The problem with selling them to Archie is he also sells them to you, so I don't think he gives you as much money for them. But you can see it's right at the end of this route, so it keeps it all kind of close together. But this will ensure that we keep a minimum stock of all of them on the island, and then, we're getting a good amount to everyone. And this is actually just going to work really well as far as making sure that, let's say that Beerlin has a storage capacity of 2,000. It would take like 7 of these routes without doing this in order to actually get, the stock, right? In order to get the, whatever. And so, it really does change a lot, to be honest. As far as it just kind of being a much more fluid route. And it keeps everything going. I'm always going to be making them. I'm always going to be having them on all the islands. And, it can really set up a route where then you can just stop worrying about, like I have a lot of routes on this island right here. Or if we go over to, like New World local routes, like the amount of islands that are receiving ponchos, for instance, there's a tremendous amount of them. That's another option, but then when you get to ones like this, you know, it's going to be a lot of finagling around and adjusting the numbers, where if you do the minimum stock at 50 and 50, you don't need to, like, do the math on how many different islands you have. And I think it just honestly worked. I think it's just a much better way to kind of automate the entire process, and that's what makes me like it so much. And so, yeah, I honestly think that it's just going to be a really good idea that could get used in a lot of different applications. So, yeah.